We're going to start the workshops now with Barbara Pezzi talking about Google Analytics. And before I was asked to moderate this, I wanted to come to this session to learn about it. So Barbara, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Stephen. So let's see, as soon as the slides are up, while we wait for the slides to be up, for those of you that didn't come to my previous session earlier, just a short introduction about myself so that you know who is standing here talking to you. I've had 20 years in the travel industry, out of which 16 were spent working for Fairmont. I became a freelance consultant in April last year, and I specialize in data and search. And I also teach for Squared Online, which is Google's long-distance academy course. So without further ado, this is going to be really, really hands-on with loads of practical tips. I will be sharing the slides afterwards, so don't feel that you need to take a picture of everything. I sincerely hope it's going to be of use. So why analytics? I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this because in my mind, this kind of makes absolutely sense. If you don't have a basic understanding of how a process works, how are you supposed to be able to optimize it? So if you don't know how AdWords works, if you don't know how to interpret your data, you basically just go in blind. So if you can't measure it, you cannot improve it. And the problem that I find with most clients that I work with, and in general by talking to people and speaking at these conferences for many years, is that people have this idea of Google Analytics or data just something that you need to report on. It's like a necessary evil that you need to do. But data in itself doesn't tell us anything. A number is just a number, right? So knowing that you have 20,000 page views or 20,000 sessions, we don't know if that's good, it's bad, we know nothing. But knowing that a specific visitor from a PPC campaign, from a specific location, using a specific keywords, tend to convert or produces X amount of money, then that starts becoming a little bit more useful, a little bit more interesting. So the other, so this was more or less the issues with data in general. Then when we narrow it down to the subject at hand, which is AdWords, the problem is that I find the client knowledge is very limited, so they trust somebody else to run their campaigns. The problem with it is that sometimes, not sometimes, sadly, most of the time, the vendor is being paid based on a commission, based on a percentage of spend. So the vendor is not realistically going to be incentivized to try to spend as little as possible and making as much money as possible, because the more they spend, the more money they make. So, and if you don't know what they're doing and you can't stop that from happening, you end up spending a huge amount of money and you're going to get told that, well, we got you 5 million impressions, we got you 10,000 clicks. Then by click is just a click, and an impression is just an impression. You don't get paid in clicks, and you don't get paid in impressions. So without you actually being able to police or actually understand what's going on, it's going to be really difficult for you to make sure that your campaigns are managed in the correct way. And this is where then Google Analytics and Google AdWords together starts becoming really powerful, because even if you do not have access to the account, there's a lot that you can do. And then hopefully, since it's your account, you will have access to it. So if you have any agency running your PPC campaigns and they don't let you have access to your own account, then sack the agency and find somebody else, frankly. Before we start looking at the data, I just wanted to make one thing clear in case people weren't aware of it. So the quality score will determine how well your campaign runs. So the quality score is like when you were at school and you got a mark from your teacher. That's what Google does with every single campaign. So they will look at your landing page, they will look at your keyword selection, they will look at your ad quality, they will look at your historic data, and then they will determine how high your quality score should be. Now, the important thing here is also the historic data performance. So when you first start a PPC campaign, you will have a quality score of about 4 or 5. You'll be in the middle. So you're not going to be penalized. You're not going to have a great one. They'll give you an even playing field. And then over time, based on how you manage this campaign, your quality score could potentially go up or could go down. Now, why is this important? Because this impacts EdRank, and EdRank impacts how much you pay for a keyword. So we can see here in the graph, it's the same keyword for 4 different advertisers, and the one with the highest quality score at the top, pays a fraction of the one underneath, the one at the bottom of the graph. So potentially, you think you may be buying a keyword, let's say Hotel London, and it's costing you £15 a click, and you may just think this is a really expensive keyword, I can't afford it. But actually, there could be somebody else, another advertiser, bidding on the same keyword and spending £2. So this is how much of an impact the quality score has. And if you don't know how to change that, you're going to end up paying a lot of money for the same keywords that somebody else is getting for the quarter of the cost that you're paying. And that's the formula of the EdRank. So they look at your bids, you look at the quality score, you look at the format of the ad, and then that will determine how much you're going to pay. So how to view your quality score, and I've put a link there just in case this is not clear or you lose your way within AdWords. But in the old days, you had to mouse over every single keyword to find out what your quality score was. Now, actually, there's a report you can set up. But this one you're going to have to do in AdWords, and that will tell you how your quality score has progressed over time. So if you have an agency managing your campaign, make sure you ask them to report on this and to show you how your quality score has evolved over time. Because if your quality score from the start of the campaign to today actually is either stable or going down, then they're not really doing the job they're paying for. So where do you start? Where could you start in Google Analytics? I like always to take care of the 101s, of the basics first. So this is what we're going to be looking at today. So the first thing you want to do is just a quick health check. So you go to your source medium report, and then you switch the view to compare. And then you look at the quality of your conversion rates, for example, of your paid traffic versus the organic one, versus the free one. If what you are paying for has a worse performance or a worse quality than what you're getting for free, then again, why are you paying for it? So that's a really quick way of seeing it. And then the other thing you want to see is the percentage of new sessions, because what you don't want to do is pay for traffic that you already own. So in theory, the right PPC campaign is going to be one that actually helps you acquire new customers at the right price, rather than buy for traffic that you already own at the wrong price. Then what you want to do, once you know, so the first step is going to tell you, okay, do I have a problem? Do I not have a problem? The second step is going to then let you look at all the various campaigns and look at the ROI and say, maybe you have one campaign that generates a huge amount of traffic, but it's the wrong traffic. So I always do this example for my clients. It's like if you had a butcher convention and then you were task of filling out, and there were 500 seats at a butcher convention that you have to sell, and you end up inviting 500 vegetarians. It's kind of the same principle. So the traffic alone and the impressions alone are not going to be enough, and you cannot just judge a campaign based on how much traffic they got you. You want to look at what happened to the traffic. And then if you don't want to look at the data like this, because maybe you think visually, you're more of a creative type, there is a report in GA that looks at the tree map report, and you can again change the metrics that you want to look at, and visually you're immediately able to see which campaign is performing well from a traffic perspective, from a revenue perspective, or from a bounce rate perspective. So then we start getting into the data, into the analysis, into the actual nitty-gritty and looking at all the details. So the first thing you want to do is look at your geographic market. So if you're targeting, for example, the United States, you do not really need to target the whole of the United States. Maybe there's only 6 or 7 states that are actually generating some revenue for you. So why buy traffic from the other 40 if they're not really doing it for you? If it's in your own country, you may be able to break it down by region. So if I'm in London and 90% of my revenue, my traffic comes from England, then do I really need to target Northern Ireland or Scotland? Maybe you don't. So start looking at where the revenue is coming from and start narrowing it down. Once you know that, then you want to break this out into separate campaigns. Because if you have, let's say, 6 states here, we have how many? 4 or 5. And California is the number 1. So this is where I get most of my revenue. Then we have some light blue ones and a middle blue one. Then I would personally break this out into separate campaign, 1 campaign per geo, or maximum 2, so that if your budget gets cut, then at least you can keep the campaign running in the state where, or in the region, or in the city that makes sense to you. Number 1. Number 2, you may want to bid more aggressively where you're getting your money from than other regions. And then there's going to be another reason for this, which is going to be about time parting, that we'll look at it in a minute. So time of the day has an impact as well. So you could potentially be getting 80 or 90% of your revenue between 10 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the evening. And maybe it's Monday to Friday only, or maybe you're the opposite. Most of your business comes in the evening and on weekends. So again, why bid? Why be buying for traffic in times of the day or days of the week which are really not optimal for you? Cut it down. So we start narrowing it down. So we first cut down to the geos, then we cut down to the time frame. Now, if you have, for example, I don't know, East Coast and West Coast in the same campaign, time parting starts becoming a bit of an issue because the time zones are different. If you start having a campaign that includes the United States and Australia, again, it's impossible to day part. So make sure that you always separate your markets, your key markets, into different campaigns. Then the next thing you want to look, which is really key, is match types. Now, this is one of the things that even the Google reps will always somewhat trip you over, is that you can bid in 3 different ways. Your keywords can have 3 different bid types. So you can say, I want broad. And broad means, let's say I want you bidding on hotel London. But if you put that in broad match, that means pretty much anything related to hotels and potentially London. So you could be, your ad could be shown for somebody looking at holiday in England. It doesn't mean that they're looking for London, but because London is in England and because a hotel generally is used by holiday people, Google will basically match anything that's somewhat related to it. Those ones will cost you a huge amount of money because it's just so much traffic. And that's the default way all the keywords are set up in AdWords unless you change them. And this is also going to be the default way your agency is going to set up if you're paying them on volume, because this is the quickest way of getting the highest amount of volume. Then you can change that to phrase. So that means that Hotel London can only be, if you're still on Hotel London, your ad can only be shown if there are words before and after Hotel London. So it could be Luxury Hotel London, or it could be Hotel London for couples. That's a little bit less expensive and it's a bit narrower. And then we have exact, where what you're bidding on has to be exactly what the person is typing. Then there is an in-between where you're broad, which is modified broad, where you say the words that have to be in the phrase, but then there could be words in between, before and after. So the right way of managing campaigns, and this is where a huge amount of money from my own audits gets wasted, is all your main terms, everything that is really important needs to be in exact. Then you can create the duplicate ad group with the same terms in broad match, or broad modifier rather, but then use all your exact keywords as negative in that campaign. So your broad campaign just becomes something to research potential new terms that you haven't thought about, but the bulk of your money and your funds go on exact match. So once you go back to, if you have PPC campaigns running, go back to this report and check what is the revenue distribution in your case for the match types. If all of your revenue, all of your costs are going to broad match, then you know you have a problem. Ad positions is another thing that has an impact on the price. So in some cases, you don't have to be number one. I mean, number two actually may work out okay, or number three as well. So again, there's a link to a report to an article that has a custom report that you can just apply to your Google Analytics account. And then you can see whether, am I really paying, do I need to be there? Do I need to pay as much? Can I afford a drop in position? And then you want to look at the products, right? So for hotels, for example, they always want to sell suites, or they want to sell the most expensive things they have. And even retailers, they always want to sell the thing that the most expensive or the most valuable thing they have in stock. The thing is that in reality, AdWords is not infallible. It doesn't mean that just because you have an AdWords campaign, all in a sudden, let's open the floodgates and they will come and they will buy. So really expensive products, whether it's a suite, a presidential suite, or some other luxury item, don't necessarily always do really well on PPC. So you can test it, but just be realistic. So if you see that actually the majority of the people that come from PPC traffic buy my deluxe rooms, then focus on that and find something else for the suite. So what I'm trying to say is don't keep on throwing money at something that is not working, because 9 times out of 10, assuming the campaign is done properly, it's just that it's not the right channel for that specific product. And then what you want to do is also compare devices, because you can change your bid based on the device that the user is on. So if somebody is on mobile, you could say, actually, the people on mobile, I want to bid 30% or 40% less because they don't convert as much. Or maybe they do. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe most of your conversions come from mobile, and you want to decrease your desktop bids. So again, we are now narrowing down further and further. So we've got our geo, we've got our time, we've got our match types, we've got our products. Now we start looking at devices and we're changing our bids for that. And then we go to the next stage, which is, again, part of your quality score, and is the landing page. And this is one of the mistakes that pretty much 90% of every customer I work with does. They assume that you can just bid on any keywords, and that's it. But actually, the keyword needs to be present in the ad and needs to be present in the landing page. So if you're a hotel and you want to bid on weddings, and you don't send them to a page where you're talking about weddings, where the word wedding is present, that's not really going to work in your favor. And Google does this to ensure that people are not misleading, that you don't send people to the wrong site, to the wrong page. So if you want to do a promotion of a special event, let's say Formula One in my city, or St. Patrick's Day in my city, or whatever, then you need to create a dedicated landing page that talks about this event. Otherwise, the campaign becomes pointless. You're not going to make it. And what you want to make sure is that you look at how people navigate and what people look at in the campaign and how they interact with it. And first of all, make sure you look at your bounce rate and apply a traffic just from PPC, because this is not only relevant from an ad quality perspective, but also from a keywords perspective. So you could even decide to send somebody that types a specific keyword to a very specific page. So, for example, there's a lot of people that like hotels with balconies, right? They like balcony rooms, I myself included. If I have to stay somewhere, I want it to have a balcony because I like the fresh air, I hate aircon and whatever. So if I'm typing hotel room with balcony, London or Sydney, then when I click on the ad, I want to land on a page that talks to me about this is the room that we have with a balcony. If you just send me to your homepage and then I have to browse and have to keep on finding it, if I haven't found it in 2 minutes, I'll go. And this is what most people do. So make sure that whatever you're sending your traffic is the right place and is the right for the search questioning, for the search term in question. And then your next stage, once you've done that, is to optimize your ads. Because as we saw earlier, ads have a really important are very important on the quality score. So what you want to do is make sure that you don't have one ad group with 70 or 80 keywords in it, all completely different, and then you'll have one ad that needs to be relevant for 70 or 80 keywords. That's not going to work. So if you want to, for example, bid on Hotel London, Luxury Hotel London, Romantic Hotel London, and all the variation, then each variation needs its own ad group with its own ad that is going to refer to those terms in the ad and then on the landing page. So this is really important. And then for testing, because by default in AdWords, Google will decide which ad to show. So they will look at what somebody's typing, what they may have done in history, and decide which one of your ads they will show. However, for testing, you want to change that setting and set the ads to rotate evenly for 2 to 3 weeks so that you're actually able to see which one converts better and which doesn't. And make sure that you have at least 2 or 3 at any given time. Unless you're really buying a very niche term that gets 10 impressions a month, then you need at least 2 or 3. And this should be changed regularly. So you should be working your way through this every couple of months. You should try new ad copy, new test, and see how that goes. And then be mindful of regional terms and variations. So, for example, in London, the city centre, we call it the West End, or in general, let's call it that. In Sydney, they call it the CBD, Central Business District. In the States, they say downtown. We don't say downtown. So if you're bidding in a specific market, then learn how they use specific terms and make sure you incorporate them so that you don't go. And make sure the spelling is also correct. So don't use American spelling for a British campaign and vice versa. And then what you want to do is also make the most of all the extensions available, because that, again, is going to give a boost to your quality score. The more extensions you have, the more Google will love you. And extensions are basically like add-ons to an ad, things that you put in to make them look a bit better. So the one on the left-hand side, no, the right-hand side, sorry, I'm one of those people that can't figure out which one is right and which one is left. Still middle age, never mind. But I don't drive, so don't worry. So the one on the right-hand side, those that I highlighted, those are site links. So there you can just add some additional text. And the cool thing about it is that, of course, you take so much more space on the page in the browser. So your real estate, your ad real estate has just doubled in size. And then you can add some additional things that we see on the left-hand side, such as highlights, promotions that you may have, location extension, phone numbers. Try to add as many as you can and make the most of all of them, because, again, that is going to reduce your costs. And then the last thing one of the other things I like to do is create a segment for each campaign and look at what other pages do they look at once they land on the site. So there's actually even a case study that I did with Google when I still worked for Swissôtel. So I had the client, it was my own company. So the hotel was a hotel in Singapore, and we were doing a PPC campaign targeting the UK, Australia, and the US. And then I saw that the UK market was actually spending more money, but we weren't getting enough of it. So by applying a segment and looking at the content that the British people were consuming that came from my PPC campaign versus the Australians, I saw that the Brits were looking more at facilities, restaurants, features of your hotels. The Australians were looking more at deals and promotions. So we then changed the landing page. We created a landing page for each campaign, for each country, and we doubled our conversions in a short amount of time, in a couple of months. So this is how much something like this would have an impact on your cost and your campaign. And then make sure that whatever you bid on is relevant. So don't bid on things that you want to bid on because you think this should be right. It needs to be somewhat relevant. And I've got a case study here where I'm just showing you. So this is one of the campaigns that I took over for a client. And it was the same keywords, but they were in the wrong ad group with the wrong structure, with the wrong ad. So the quality score was awful. And they were actually wanting to delete them. So when I took over and I restructured the whole account, you can see the second one, the first two, same keywords, but within a short amount of time, the one that wasn't producing anything at all in a sudden started producing. And the one that was at the top that actually was producing, actually we changed the cost and the results of it. So it's really not often about what you're bidding on, it's how you're doing it. Then what you want to do is also make sure you optimize budget. And while I'm not a big fan of attribution or the attribution concept in itself, because I think it's often used for the wrong reasons, like to justify really bad campaigns and make them look like, I think there's putting lipstick on a pig makes it maybe a bit more relevant, even though I like pigs, but vegetarian. But really, what happens in many cases is that you have your brand terms and you have your generic terms, and all your conversion, 80% of your conversion are going to be in your brand terms, because this is the natural evolution of search. So somebody may say, Luxury Hotel London, they click on your ad, they come to your site, they like it, then they leave and maybe click on 2 other ads, and then they may just go to TripAdvisor and look at the reviews, and then they decide, okay, yours is the one that I want to stay in, so they will type your hotel name and they will convert. However, so your hotel name, your brand term, is going to be the keyword that gets the credit for the conversion because it's all on last click. However, the generic term, Luxury Hotel London, was the one that brought you the customer in the first place. So if you only look at keywords, or if you determine which keywords you should be bidding on, or which campaign you should keep on running based on last click, you may be missing out on some great insights. And if you don't have a huge amount of traffic, or you don't have a huge amount of money, and you don't want to pay some expensive attribution tool, then in Google Analytics, there's the multi-channel funnels that shows you the value based on the last click, but it also gives you the revenue based on assisted conversion. So every single time that channel wasn't in the last one, but the user interacted with it before they converted. So this is an important one to look at. And then you can change your bids also on demographics. So if the majority of your clients are males from 30 to 50, then don't bid on females of 18-year-old females or 18-year-old boys. Just bid for the people that actually are using your site and buying your products. And make sure you don't cannibalize SEO versus PPC. So if there are terms that you rank for organically really well, and there's hardly any competition on it, then don't pay for it, right? I mean, always look at the 2 channels together. So I just got a couple of examples here, and I'm going to need to go over so I can see it a bit better. So this one is a campaign where they were buying a huge amount of traffic, but it wasn't converting. So the ROI was really rubbish. And the problem is that there was a lot of SEO cannibalization. So I got rid of half of the keywords that they were bidding on. I changed all the bids. And then you can see here that cost went down by 55% for the PPC campaign. However, my overall revenue from search went up 83%. So now it makes sense because you're no longer bidding on stuff that you could get for free. Here was another account where we just kept on optimizing and optimizing it. So even though the traffic was doubled, as you can see there, we actually also doubled the ROI and the revenue. So this is when it's done properly, when you take each step at a time and do it gradually. Then here, it's when it was a campaign that was just so badly managed. I was tasked to audit it, and it was so rubbish that there was no way to rescue it. So I just kind of got rid of it and started from scratch. And even by starting it from scratch, we increased the quality score, everything went up, and the revenues went up. The only thing that you want to do is make sure that you don't set up a campaign and then forget about it. Like you have to, especially in the first 3 months, you have to be in every day or at least once or twice a week and keep on tweaking. And this overall is pretty much the framework for the basic stuff. So, which is what we talked about earlier, is what are they buying, when are they buying it, where are they based, is the landing page correctly, and what keywords am I bidding on? One last thing, if you do, a lot of agencies will require you to put pixels on the site if you want to run AdWords campaign. Actually, Safari changed the rules last year, and third-party cookies are no longer supported in Safari. And Safari is a huge browser for a lot of people. So if you're running AdWords campaign and you're only using pixels, that's not really going to work because your Safari campaigns are not going to be tracked. So you want to make sure that your AdWords account is linked to your Google Analytics account. And by doing that, the AdWords campaign is going to be using the Google Analytics cookie. So you do not then need a pixel at all. So don't bother with pixels, just link the two. And then on top of it, you also have then greater visibility of what's happening with your campaigns rather than just relying on an agency report. Because, and I'm a data analyst, I can tell you that if you torture the data long enough, it will confess. So I can make anything look great if I want to, even the worst campaign on the planet. So make sure that you stick to one source of truth, your own data, your GA account, and don't settle for anything less. So in conclusion, before we start doing anything too advanced, so you potentially do a remarketing campaign, audience match, importing your email address into AdWords. I mean, there's so many things. You can even change your bids based on the weather if you wanted to. So there's so much you can do. But before you go really advanced, then make sure that everything, and I mean everything, is set up correctly. All the basics are taken care of, all the stuff that we've looked at today. If they try to sell you a bid management tool, unless you have a huge amount of transactions, so let's say unless you're Amazon, or you're like a really high volume retailer, don't bother because they need data to work properly. So you're generally always better off doing all the bid management manually. Make sure that everything is set up in the analytics tool. So if you're a B2B site and you're trying to measure leads, form submissions, then you need to make sure that the form submissions are correctly tracked in Google Analytics. Otherwise, you can't measure that. And that happens a lot. And stick to your own data, as I said earlier. Just don't use pixels, don't look at other stuff, because pixels could have very different attribution systems. So most of the marketing pixels that agencies use ignore all channels. So in the case of somebody clicks on your PPC ad, then comes back to the site organically and converts, in Google Analytics, that conversion is going to go to organic. But if you use an agency pixel, that conversion is going to go to PPC because those pixels ignore every other channel apart from their own. So that's something worth remembering. Start small, do it well. So don't start with 50,000 keywords. Start with the basic, build some ads, and then slowly but surely, as everything starts building up, then add some more. And also have the right expectations. So if you get, let's say, 20 conversions a month, right? When you start a PPC campaign, potentially you can expect a 10-15% lift. But what's not going to happen is that your 20 conversions are going to become 60 overnight. So make sure that you have the right expectation, and also bear in mind that it's going to take about 3 months for the account and the campaign to optimize and to increase your quality score. So the longer the campaign runs, the better it's going to be from an ROI perspective and an optimization perspective. And I know we don't have a lot of time, so I hopefully given you some food for thought here of things that you could potentially do, and I try to make it as actionable as possible. This is one of my favorite quotes. It's also the same thing I tell people when they ask me for a discount on my fees. So the answer is always no. But the price of light is less than the cost of darkness, and never, never be more relevant than in a case like AdWords, where you're actually buying traffic. So you want to make sure that it's the right traffic at the right price for your business. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? That was a lot of detail. Let me get the mic back ready.
Hi, my name's Vicky. I have a startup called Earth Changers. I work in sustainable tourism. Aside my commercial job in that, I'm also a charity trustee. And the account I oversee for the charity, we have a Google grant, as you may be aware. And obviously they changed the rules regarding that recently. I don't know how involved you may or may not have been with charity accounts. And our primary goal for that now has to be a 5% click-through rate, which has to come before anything else. So I guess I just wanted to ask is, we would probably structure our account to optimize on that basis first and foremost, and then follow the rest of your steps thereafter, and whether you had anything that you would add in to that, just to think about charity side of things, and apologies to everyone who's purely commercial here.
Do you know what? Maybe I can just
Sure. Yeah.
after we finish, then we have a little chat.
No
It's
problem.
such a niche thing,
Yeah.
so
All right, thank you.
It's probably easier that way, I think.
Sounds like a real live need. Any questions? Any general questions?
They're all been dazzled. They're all
Let me
speechless.
propose one to you. When do they know that they need a consultant? Do most people not even realize that they're losing so much money on the way they're doing their setup that it's cheaper to pay someone to help them?
Normally, by the time they come to me, the general email is, we have a feeling that we are not making enough money here. Could you have a look at it? So most of the times is when it's too late, because by that stage, they already wasted months and months of funds. But yeah, so normally it's when somebody, the problem is when, and you know, it kind of breaks my heart a bit when I see it, because in some cases I just do the data analysis. I don't manage the campaign. I'm just being employed to, you know, optimize the accounts or fix the GA implementation, and I see how badly it's being managed, and you almost want to tell them. And in many cases, if they're tied into the agency or they have a great relationship, they believe everything the agency tells them. And sometimes even if I gotta be honest, the Google reps are not, AdWords reps are not the one, they are not particularly incentivized to save you money either, let's put it that way, right? So you have this whole network, this whole framework of the agency wants to make you spend as much as you can because they make money out of it. Google wants you to spend as much as you can because they make money out of it. And unless you really know, you'll end up spending all of this money. And they will tell you that, well, there's the billboard effect, there's people that call, that's going to come with every possible explanation of why the campaign is rubbish, when in most cases it's actually just being badly managed. And it's also a question of money. So if you invest, if you want to pay very little, if you buy 1 day a month from an agency, then in fairness, you cannot expect that agency to do a great job with it, because half of the day is going to be used to do a report, and then you may have an hour here and there to optimize your account. So and they know that if you haven't got a clue, why should they bother? You know, why should they try harder? I mean, I'm not saying that all the agencies are the same, but it is, from what I've seen, from all the audits I've done, it does tend to happen quite a lot.
Okay. How many people here use Google? Are active? Quite a few. Okay. Any other questions?
Hi, Barbara. I'm Chris from Avio. We work on the agency side in terms of digital campaigns for hotel clients across the world.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. I've taken all of that
Present
on
company
board.
excluded, of course. I didn't mean.
What we do find actually is a lower CPA on using Bing. Just wanted to get your quick thoughts and opinions on Bing as a channel.
So funny enough, I found that Bing had a higher ROI than AdWords or than Google, but just for the properties in the United States. So I haven't had any success with Bing outside of the US. And even in the US, the ones that performed the best were the ones, for whichever reason, on the West Coast. So I don't know whether it's the proximity to the headquarters or something, but I found from experience, like even when I was at Fairmont, we had about 60 hotels in the US, plus another 50 cross outside. And I just stopped the Bing campaign or anything outside of the US. It wasn't really gaining any traction. As you say, the CPA was really high. But even within the US and Canada, there were some properties did really well. So the cost, because the search volume is much lower, and the costs weren't really that